Hello, hello. I know Carla's class is still going right now. Just wait for a moment. Put our finished project in there so you guys can see. I kind of set things up a little bit differently today, so I'm just going to see if it works. I'm going to figure out whereabouts my frame is. I'll get started in a second here. Hello, Kim. They're so cute, eh? I know, Kim. They're adorable. I hope everybody is having a great start to the retreat. Carla's class is still going right now, so I understand if people aren't able to tune in, that is a-okay, because these classes will be available for you to watch at any point in time. So we'll just kind of dive right in. Sorry, I've got this glare on my mat. I think it's coming from my overhead light, though. I wonder if I should like set up a diffuser or something. It's a little bit annoying. But anyways, this is the project that we're going to be creating. We're going to be watercoloring today. We are going to use the Bewitched set, which you got in your kit. Just make sure that oh, I've got a terrible glare. Hold on a sec there. Let me move that for a minute. I'll put that light back on when we're going to be working with non-reflective surfaces. So this is the Bewitched set that came in your kit. We are going to be using the bats, this little guy here, this one, and this one, all three of them. I just thought they were absolutely adorable. If you checked in the file that I had uploaded, I did have some homework for you guys to do. I'm going to just put that light back down here now so I can see a bit better. And your homework included stamping these little guys out ahead of time on watercolor paper. So I've got that ready to go here. I've still got my measurements from my picture to go, or that I posted in the file. So I've stamped them in our Wicked Black ink on watercolor paper, and then I just used a circular item to draw in the moon with a pencil. I just used the bottom of one of my bottles so that it's got this bat kind of flying into the moon a little bit, and this tree branch is just overhanging it a little bit, just like that. So we're going to work on this watercolor to create this bit of a glow around the moon. It's not really a difficult scene at all, and then the moon will take a little bit of fussing around. Thank you, Kim. So we're going to have a lot of fun with that. We'll do a little bit of splattering for the stars, and hopefully ahead of time you've inked up all of your papers in black, so I'll just go over that quickly now before we get into the watercoloring. Your card base, just as I posted there, you're going to have that. I mean, it doesn't really matter. I had mine open like from the bottom, so I've got mine opening to the top here. So as you can see, I had inked around in the Wicked Black ink in both the inside and outside of the card. The optional piece that I had for you guys to do, if you wanted to decorate the inside, this was your own cardstock that you would have had, but this was that white cardstock that I had you cut, and then I used the Bat and Moon stencil that we have. You're going to have to pardon mine, it's a little bit dirty, I have not cleaned it yet, but the Bats and Moon stencil. And that's with Granite Gray. Hello, Wendy Jean. I'm just going over the prep work that you guys did before so we can dive into the watercoloring. So this is the Granite Gray ink with the Bats and Moon stencils. And again, I inked all around that edge in the black. This was all included in your prep work. These bits here we'll be putting on the inside after. And then you've got all of your other little bits and pieces of paper here. And again, they've all been inked. Ready to go for when we're about to assemble. I'm just going to set things in order here. I've got a little tray to try to keep myself organized here. The other thing that I asked you guys to do ahead of time was to take some of the chipboard bats. I took one of each size. I love this chipboard. So I love chipboard anyways, but this is a lot of fun. Hi, Roberta. Hi, Wendy. We've got 2 Wendy's in. You are on. So what I did with our chipboard bats here, I just have a, let me see if it's handy here. I've just got a marker here. It's kind of a brush tip marker. I mean, you could use your Copic too. It doesn't really matter, but that was handy. Colored them first, and then I coated them in black stickles. This was the stickles that I used here. I love this stuff, the black diamond. So those things are ready to go for when we are done and ready to assemble. So, the other thing I had mentioned that you could do, as you can see, I had this white frame around my card here, sorry, my image, and that's just done by, I had said in the prep instructions that you just tape around the edge, and so that's all I've done here is gone around. I've used this Scotch, I think it's Scotch, yeah, Scotch. It's like a washi tape that I just got from, I think it was the hardware store, but you could use any washi tape or painter's tape that you have. Just make sure it's low tack. And I'm going around here so that we're going to be left with a white border once we do take that off when we're done painting. So I just like to go around and make sure that I am sealed well along the edges there. And so with that all being said, I think we are ready to go. Hello, Mary Pat. So I'm going to get my paints out here. I'm just going to make sure that everything's in frame. So just bear with me for a sec. Like I said, I kind of set things up a little bit differently today because I usually have my camera coming in from the side, and I sometimes struggle a little bit to keep everything in frame. So I set it up like in front of me this time. I'm hoping that that keeps things a little bit easier for you guys to see. I am going to zoom in a little bit right now, so just pardon me for a moment. And let's see how that looks. I just got to wait for the delay on my screen. I'm going to try to watch for questions as we go here. Hello, Danielle. I've got my paintbrushes ready to go. I know I listed some suggestions in the group, so I'll tell you guys which ones I'm using. I'm going to start with the, well, probably the round 4 and the round 6, just because there's some fussy bits to work in. The liner, I'll be using that after. I had also listed the colors that I will be using for my paints, but I also said that you guys could use anything comparable, and so that's why I provided that little color swatch sheet there. I think I put that into the pictures as well, just so that you could see approximately the colors we were going to go for. So I'm just going to use, just because it's got the multiple wells here, I'm going to use the cover for my paint palette here, and I'm just going to pop in, of course not all of these have magnets on the bottom, I'm just going to pop my paints in here so that I'm ready to go. All right, let me actually just, what ones didn't have magnet? I'm just sticking a couple magnet pieces on the bottom. Sorry, I thought I was all ready to go, guys, and I apparently was not. Just so that they'll stick in place when I'm creating our washes. We'll maybe move that down a little bit more. Actually, I'm going to try to move my camera just a little bit up. Give us a little bit more space to work with. And I'll just wait to make sure that that is in frame for you guys. So the first thing we are going to start off by doing is a wet and wet wash. And so if anybody has painted with me before, you'll know that this is something we frequently do for our skies and anything. Well, I do it on a lot of the image, but I've got 2 cups of water ready to go here. One that will be for my dirtier rinse water, and then one for clean. So the first thing I'm going to do here is the sky. So I want to mix myself up a nice sky color. So I'm going to grab, I'm going to try to make a pretty good puddle of ink, or why do I keep wanting to say ink? Paint here. So this is the indigo that I'm grabbing. And I'm going to grab a nice big pile of that, because once I get going with this wash of paint, I don't really want to have to stop and mix more. So, and we'll be doing a couple layers. So I'm just adding a bunch of that here. And then I'm going to mix in to start some alizarin crimson which will give us a nice purpley color. I'm just going to mix that over here. So I can come over this way a little bit more. Let's grab a little bit more of that. Okay, so I've got that ready to go there. Maybe we'll just do one more little bit there. It's a little too purpley. Okay, alrighty. We are going to do, we're going to just wet our paper now. So I'm going to wet every bit of the sky here and go around the moon and all of my stamped images here. The reason being, and I know this will be a repeat for many of you who have watched videos before, but when you do a wet in wet wash, your paint will only travel where your paper is wet. So as long as I don't paint into the moon or into the bats at all here, then that will preserve those areas and the paint will only flow in the wet areas. You'll see what I mean. It'll take me a minute here. I got to get this base out, and this is boring for you guys because you can't even see what I'm doing because it's just water onto dry paper. But it's very important that we get this paper nice and wet. Now you don't want it like saturated and dripping, but you want it to have a nice sheen. And I usually find that I use Arch paper, and it's quite a thirsty paper, so I usually find that I have to do a couple of coats of water to get it well saturated. I'll switch to my round 4 in some of these fussy little bits here, but for right now my round 6 is working okay. So like I said, I'm wetting this so it's going to have a nice sheen around it. I don't want any puddles of water. I don't want it sopping wet, but I do want it to be nicely wet. I'll show you guys, because if I pick it up afterwards, you'll sort of see the sheen that I'm looking for on the paper. So Carla's class was going great. I hated to click off of it because she had some beautiful creations going. I think she was just about to start on that ombre tag here, and I just realized there's something I meant to do here. Hold on a sec. I had mentioned to you guys about a waterproof fine liner, and one thing I'm going to do here, I'm going to bring this tree trunk just to the edge of that tape border. But anyways, Carla's got some great projects going on. If Kim's still here, I'm not sure who's up next. I can't remember. I did look earlier and I forget now. But there will be another class after. I think Kim said we have a few lives. I think we've got one recorded video as well that will be going up at some point today. So lots and lots of teaching going on today, lots of classes. And of course, what I get excited to see is, you know, with all the classes that we prepare for the retreats, because we split a kit up between us, so it's kind of fun to see what we all can come up with to create from the kit supplies. But what's really exciting is that you guys will probably have leftovers after, and then we can see what else you guys managed to cook up in your crafty caves on your own. Okay, got one more spot around here that I missed. And I know, I'm sorry, this part is so boring, but we'll start with the paint in just a moment here. So I'm just making sure. Michelle has classes at 2 and 3. I can guarantee you I will not be done by 2 because I don't work that fast, but that's okay because like we've been saying, these classes are recorded and you'll have access to them at all times. So no offense at all if anybody jumps out of my class at 2 to go and tune into Michelle. You guys just work at your pace and tune into what you want to live, and then you can catch the rest of it on replay later. So I'm just going back right now. I just, like I said, want to make sure that my paper is well saturated with water, but not dripping. No big puddles of water. I'm trying to go right up to the edges of my image. I might get a little bit of bleeding into them, but because I didn't go in with my tiniest brush here to get right up to the tight edges, but that's okay. Okay, so I'm going to go in with a very watery mix to begin with of this purpley mix that we made. And I'm going to start kind of out here and just start to brush it through, kind of avoiding that moon area at first. And just letting the paint spread. I can tell right here I've got a heck of a lot of water, so I'm just dabbing up with a dry brush here. Or damp brush, I should say. Okay, and then I'm going to go in with a damp, clean brush here, and I'm just going to soften this edge and start to bring it in a little closer to the moon here. We want it to be lightest next to the moon so that it looks like we've got this glow that's spreading out from it. And I'm trying to work while this is still wet so that I get some nice soft blends in the sky. And now I'm going to pick up some darker color here, and I'm going to start to drop this in at the bottom. And we'll go right around the edge of this bat here. Maybe go right in around his ears here. I will look up occasionally here for looking for questions here, but I want to work fairly quick while this is all wet, so that like I said, I get a nice blend. And we can go back and do another wash over it if we have to. So again, picking up that darker color here. The further we get away from the moon, the darker it will be. I'm just going to clean up that edge there. And I'm just going to go back in a little bit with some of this lighter purple, and we'll just kind of blend it in a little bit. Okay. Let's work up here. I'm going to pick up some of that lighter color again. Just come up to the edge of the moon. And I'm going to turn this while I'm working. I guess I should look to make sure I'm staying in the frame, right guys? Sorry about that. I told you I've kind of got this set up a little different than normal. So I got to try to remember to peek up at my tablet every once in a while, make sure that we're staying in frame. Good. And then pick up a little bit of this darker color, brush that in. Drop in some darker shades and values down here again. So I am working quickly, but you kind of have to make sure that everything blends. I don't want to get too dark here just because I want a bit of glow showing up there too, but I do want it to fade off a little bit. Okay, so let's wash that brush off there. And I'm just going to soften this blend here a little bit between those values. I mean, it'll dry soft, but I just want to help it out a little bit. Now, while it's still wet, I am going to take a bit of neutral tint. I'm going to add that into the indigo here. You're not going to see much of a difference on the palette, but when I bring it in here, you should see that it'll make it even inkier down at the bottom, a nice inky. Not quite black, because I didn't want to go just black, because that makes it kind of flat. And I'm just going to drop that in just around the perimeter. Let's bring it up in there a little bit. Maybe we'll come in just a little bit into the near this bat's head. And let's just add a little bit more neutral tint right in there. Okay. Good, and I just want to get just a bit more of a dark edge. There. Okay. Now what I am going to do is go in with my smaller brush, my round 4, and I'm just going to get into the tiny little bits right around the image that the reason it didn't go right up to that is because when I was putting the initial water down, I didn't get right up tight against the drawn edges of the image there, which is okay, or the inked edges, I guess I should say. So I'm just going to tidy those up now. Just get into these itty bitty fussy bits between the bat's cheek and his wing there. Pick up a little bit of this lighter color here, and I can just see right around. I'm not using a lot of water here either, because otherwise it'll just create a weird edge. Oh, and I just realized too, we forgot to do in between these branches. So again, I didn't wet those before, but that's okay, because we're just going to come in, because it's such a small area, we can easily blend that. I'm just going back with a clean damp brush there to soften that up a little bit. And again, just to make sure that everything's kind of meeting up against the edges of the image. Now, I should have grabbed and plugged in my heat tool so we could have dried this. So you guys didn't have to sit and watch paint dry, but that's okay. I'll take that as an opportunity to sort of look up and see if there are any questions that I can answer at all. Good. I think we've got everything where we need it. So we've got to let that dry. Let me see if there's any questions. What was the original mix again? So the original mix for this lighter area here, we used the indigo and a bit of alizarin crimson. So that's, let me pull up my color card again. Oh, what did I do with it? I had it here a minute ago. There it is. I should probably leave this handy too. So for this lightest area of sky, again, that was the indigo and the alizarin crimson. And then as I graduated out, I had less of the alizarin crimson, more of the indigo, and also more paint to water ratio. So this right around the moon here was quite a watery mix. And then as we moved out, I was adding less water to the puddle of paint here. So alizarin crimson with indigo, and then alizarin crimson with indigo here as well, but it was more of the indigo. And then as we were getting to the very edges, I added some of the neutral tint into the mix of those two. So these very edges here had that neutral tint in there, just so that we can kind of get that ombre effect. Did that make sense, Roberta? You're going to have a sip of coffee here. I think this is going to end up a little bit more purpley than my original one, which that's okay. So see, every time, no problem, Roberta. Yeah, like I said, I try to explain things as I'm going along, and then sometimes I kind of forget that I've kind of missed an explanation. So yeah, you're controlling your values in your watercolor. So your values, meaning your lightest lights to your darkest darks. You're creating your values a few different ways with your watercolors. One is the amount of water that's in there, but then the other part is the amount of pigment. And so it's that, and then you can also layer as well, but you are creating that by controlling those ratios. The other thing to figure in is the amount of water that's on your paper, the amount of water that's in your brush, and all that you kind of get a feel for it the more you go. I make mistakes all the time, but the more you do it, the more you learn. And so, like I said, and watercolor, you have to kind of work light to dark, so you have to plan it out. But as this is drying, you'll see it's a nice smooth blend. So yes, more watery mix nearer the moon. And I'm even seeing here, I would have liked to have had it just a little bit lighter in there, but that's okay. I'm not going to mess with it now. And then as you move out, it's going to be more paint to water ratio, but you still want to do it while the paper is wet or damp. The last little bit that we put on it wasn't going to move as much because the paper was starting to dry a bit. Now, if I find that I want a little bit more pigment on, we can go over this after it's completely dry and put on another wash of water and add a bit more color, but I think we'll be okay. The other reason I'm sitting here chatting is because until the sky is dry, I can't really paint anything else because it's going to end up bleeding out because this paper is still a bit damp. And the way you can check if your paper's still damp, I mean, I know this isn't going to lift the color here, but if you like touch it, it's going to feel cold. And so even though it's not looking like it's fully saturated and it doesn't quite have the sheen on it that it did before, I can feel just by touching it, like it's not dry yet. But what I can do is start to add in little blobs of the moon. Now this moon will be a work in progress. It's going to take us quite a bit to build up all those textures in the moon. So what we're going to do to start off here is I'm going to wet the moon. I'm not going to get too close to the edge though. I'm kind of leaving a perimeter around the edge of the moon here, but I am going to just wet it quick here. Just adding some water, and here I'm going to pick up some of these mixes here, okay? I'm going to pick up some of that purple, really watery, and I'm just going to start to randomly like dab it in here. Still leaving some white areas. And like I said, this is going to be a work in progress. Pick up a little bit more paint on my brush now, but still quite watery, and just add little dabs here. There's really nothing structured about this. I'm just kind of adding where I think I need it. It's really loosey-goosey. And I'm just gonna soften that up a bit there. And that's gonna dry even lighter than that looks right now. And like I said, it's gonna be bit of a work in progress. This is more of the neutral tint that I'm dropping in here. Okay. I'm just going to soften that edge a bit. Bring a little bit of it out towards the edge. But like I said, I didn't wet right up to the edge of the moon just in case that paper on the sky side wasn't quite dry. I don't want it to bleed. Now we need a little bit of texture in there. Okay, we're going to leave that now. Like I said, that moon is going to take us several steps, but I kind of bounce around when I'm working on something because I'm waiting for areas to dry. It's still a little wet here. Just wondering if I should go grab my heat tool. I think we'll be okay. Maybe what we'll do next, because I feel like the paper is a little drier up here, we'll go ahead and we'll do a bit of that tree branch in there. And so for that tree branch, we're going to grab some burnt umber, and I'm going to put it into this same well on my palette here, because I'm going to mix in a bit of that purpley kind of color that we had going on. Because it's a night scene, the colors are going to be kind of desaturated, and so it's going to all kind of mix in together. And the more purpley color here that you add, you're gonna kind of take away the intent. Whoops, that's too much. That's okay. You're gonna take away the intensity of the brown, because you'll just, like I said, desaturate it a bit. So we'll start with that there, because remember, we're gonna work light to dark on watercolor. Because this isn't a very big area here, I'm not gonna worry about wetting my paper first. And I'm going to take a bit of that brown umber. Again, that was mixed with our previous mix on our palette of the indigo and the neutral tint and the alizarin crimson. And I'm just going to go ahead and lay an initial layer down on this tree branch here. Still working with my round 6 right now. Just the very tip of the brush there. And just get that in there. So like I said, because it's a night scene, we don't want that to be a nice vibrant color. I am going to add just a little bit more brown in there. I want to get a little bit more paint to water ratio, and I'm already going to start to drop in just a little bit of darker values on either edge of that branch, and just in a couple of areas there. Now we'll grab a little bit of neutral tint. I'm going to mix that into the brown here and come up with quite a dark value, and we can pick up a little bit more of that purple too. And I'm just going to come along here, and because it's still a little damp from when I put the initial layer of brown down, I'm just kind of going along the edges just to give it, so the lighter areas in the middle, it kind of gives it a round look. I'm just going to add a bit more of the brown here again, just to go back into tips of the branches. Now, if I want, I can clean off my brush so it's just a little damp, and I can kind of just dab on my paper and see how that lifts a little bit for a highlight. And I can do that along those branches too, because even in the dark, you'll still have a little bit of highlight. And I've always said, no matter whether you're working with markers or pencils or paint, it's those dynamic ranges between your values that makes your piece appear three-dimensional. So you need to not be afraid to add those dark values in, which is what I'm doing again here, and play them off your highlights. Grab a little bit more brown there, and again I'm just kind of going along the edges, and I'm going to leave that highlight there in the middle. Okay, you can see I need to add a little bit. I'm going to have to go in with my smaller brush, and so we're picking up a little bit of that brown again. And guys, if you are not able to keep up to speed, that's okay. It's not always easy to follow along with coloring, just because, I mean, the person teaching kind of knows where they're going with it, but especially when you're working with something like watercolor and you have time-sensitive things like the wetness of your paper, if you will. You need to work fairly quick. I'm just going to turn my paper towel around here. You need to work fairly quick so that you can get the blends that you're trying to achieve. And so if you're finding it difficult to keep up to speed, by all means, you can rewatch it and then kind of have an idea of where we're going. So watch a step, like watch the sky, pause it, and then go back and start it over again. And if you need to watch it a couple times, just so that you kind of have a feeling of where we're going to go with this. Now we're going to grab some of the undersea green. And I'm just going to come right into the same area here as well, because again, I want it to be kind of desaturated. We're going to mix that into a bit of the brown and a bit of the purple here. Pick up a little bit more green. And bring in some brown and bring in some purple. Honestly, I would not clean my palette off that often if it wasn't for when I'm teaching videos, because I know you guys probably like to see the color blends. Hi, Annabella. Hey, Sabrina. So we're going to go in again, because they're tiny areas. I'm not going to worry about wetting at first, but we're going to get green into these leaves here. And it's not going to be a vibrant green again, because it's a nighttime scene and our color is desaturated because we don't have that bright light of the sun. So we'll drop in the green into our leaves here. And then right away, I'm going to grab a bit more of the deeper color I've got on my palette here, and I'm going to mix in to the green for a shadow color. And not that there's a lot of room for detail on these leaves. I want to make sure my brush is a little bit more dry there. I'm just dropping in a hint of a shadow. Just a little bit. There we go. And then I'm going to clean my brush off and just have it a little bit damp. And again, I'm just going to lift off a little bit in a couple spots. And if I find that I need a little bit more of a lighter green, I can kind of glaze over these highlight areas after. There we go. Okay, there's that. Now, before I go any further, I think because that moon will be dry now, I'm going to clean off my brush. I'm going to get some clean water again, lightly, because we don't want to disrupt the pigment that's already on the paper. We're just going to very lightly go over all of this with a wash of water again, but don't scrub at it. Okay, and then we're going to just add a little bit more pigment into some of these areas here. And then, like I said, we'll be doing some work with some gouache on this moon. We'll be adding some yellow ochre into this moon and some of that bleed-proof white that I talked about in the supplies. So that will be our last step, is working on the finishing touches of that moon. I might even squeeze out. So the gouache will come earlier, but the bleed-proof white was kind of one of my final steps in the painting. Okay, that's good there. How are we doing for time? 1:45. We're just going to grab a sip of coffee. Thanks, Jennifer. Okay, how's everybody doing? Any questions? I'll pause for a moment here. Grab a sip of coffee. Before our live stream started here, I made myself a fresh pot, and I decided that it was time to break into, well, not really break into, I've had it open for a while, but my Rio Thompson mint smoothie coffee. I like to mix like a scoop of that in with my regular coffee every once in a while as a treat. So I'm having mint chocolate coffee right now. I brought that to Kim's one time, and now we're all hooked on it. Actually, and I don't know if Kim's still here, but I'm going to be going to Stratford again in August. I'm taking my mom to see Chicago. My daughter as well, Ainsley. The three of us are going to go for a girls' day. So, Kim, I will be making a stop at Rio Thompson. Should you need more coffee, you let me know, and I will pick you up a bag. All right. Any questions, anybody? Alrighty. So, let's... It is so good, Sabrina. We'll move into... Maybe we'll move into doing the bats a bit. I'm going to switch to my round 4 just because they are smaller. And I'm just looking at my color instructions here to make sure I'm going to do what I did in my sample. So I'm going to move down into this section of my palette here. And I'm going to give myself some burnt umber. Just going to get some puddles of paint ready to go here. So I want some burnt umber. I am going to need neutral tint. So we'll get a puddle of that ready to go. Or the mint smoothies. Kim, I will pick up whatever you want. It's not till August 24th, but I will be going. So you let me know. I got you. Because, yes, I will be picking up mint smoothies, too. I'm not just going to pick up the coffee. And their fudge is so good. But now we're getting on a tangent. What other color did I want here? I want some of my yellow ochre. So, I'm going to get a puddle of yellow ochre. I love yellow ochre. It pretty much makes its way into everything. Like, so I kept amassing all these, you know, different paints because... you know, you just want to have a whole bunch of them, but you always end up with kind of your colors that make it into everything. Undersea green, one of my favorite colors as well. And I use it all the time. So it's my favorite green, I think, out of all of them. I like, there's a couple of other ones I like. As far as the convenience greens, you can mix them too. Were those the chocolates you sent me? It probably was, Sabrina. They're fantastic. Right. So we are going to mix a little bit of the yellow ochre and a piece of paper on my palette. Where the heck did that come from? Anyways, a little bit of burnt umber with the yellow ochre. And we'll do just a touch of neutral tint in there. I'll just have to play for this color here because gotta see what I did with it there. Is that matching? Yeah, it's not too bad there. Okay, so we're going to start with that as a wash here, okay? I am going to, I'll just go right in because these guys are kind of small, their bellies. So we'll start, actually I want to go in with a little bit more of the yellow ochre to start, and we'll build up our colors gradually. Let's just get all their bellies done. We'll kind of jump around and work on all of them. So this is yellow ochre, a bit of the burnt umber, and a bit of the neutral tint. And we'll get this guy here too. Okay, let's get a little bit more of the burnt umber into the mix there. Sorry, pardon me, a little bit more of the neutral tint and a bit more of the burnt umber in there. And their bellies are still a little bit wet here, so let's kind of go around sort of the edges, kind of letting it bleed into the center a little bit. Under the scruff a little bit as well. I'm going to dry that brush off, and then I'm just going to soften that blend. We're going quite gradually here. Okay, let's focus in on this little guy here. A little bit more of the neutral tint. A little bit more burnt umber too. We'll go back to the other ones. You could just do one bat at a time, but they were tiny little bellies. So I am just drying my brush off there just because I'm just kind of tap, tap, tap with the tip of my paintbrush here, just to soften that blend a little bit. And I might even take a little bit of that yellow ochre and just drop that into the center and sort of let the paints do their thing there and blend together. Then we'll take maybe just a bit of just the neutral tint and drop it onto this edge here. Oops, come on now. So I'm just dabbing the very perimeter of the belly or body, and because it's still a little damp, it'll blend there. So I'm going to leave that like that for now for that one. Jump around, jump around. Jump up, and get down. Please tell me that there's some other people who started singing that song too, and it's not just Kim and I. No, it's okay, Sabrina. I like tiny details. It just takes a little bit of finesse to work. Normally, it's me who tries to get Kim singing stupid songs, but well played, Kim. Well played. All right, let's do this little belly over. Actually, no, let's stick with this bat. We will, of course you knew I would get it. Gonna add a little bit more yellow ochre to my palette there. I'm gonna have to get like a 90s playlist going after, because now I'm just in the mood. All right, let's, little bit of brown ochre into this. I can't talk, I'm so sorry. Burnt umber into this yellow ochre. I'm getting this mixed up with some of the colored pencils I've been working with lately, because there's a burnt ochre colored pencil I've been using for something, and so I've got all the colors screwed up in my head. So let's go in, and just need a little bit more water on my paintbrush here. And because, like I said, I'm just going to go right over everything here, all of his features. Because he's tiny, I'm not worried about wetting the paper first here, because I can work fast enough on this small area. Okay, and now let's mix in a little bit more of the burnt umber and the neutral tint. And we're going to go around the perimeter again, into the ears a little bit. And with that clean damp brush, just tap, tap, tap around where those two colors are meeting. Gonna take a little bit more of the neutral tint, a little bit more of the burnt umber, because I want them to be gray, but I kind of wanted them to have a little bit of other coloring in there too, so they weren't just flat gray, because our sky's already kind of gray. So just again around the perimeter. And I'm gonna just do a little bit of wash of this, the three colors kind of combined just over this now that it's dry, just to sort of meld those colors together. Again, I'm not trying to disrupt the color that was there before. I'm just laying another little layer over top since it was dry already. A little bit more of my neutral tint. We're going to go in with the tiniest of little brushes after to try to add his white teeth back in there. And let's pick up just more of that lighter color there. Maybe do a little bit more of the brown and neutral tint in there. And clean damp brush and just that light tapping motion. I'm not introducing more water. I'm just softening the blend. There we go. Now he's quite a bit different in color than my sample, but that's okay. I kind of like it. Okay, we are going to go in now and do the underside of his wings because the body's dry here. So I need a bit more of that yellow ochre again. And burnt umber. I don't know why I picked up more burnt umber. I had plenty of that on my palette there. And we'll just kind of mix it all in. Want some more neutral tint though. Good. And then give myself a bit of yellow ochre, a little bit fresher yellow ochre there. Okay. All right, so we're going to start right in here, the underside of his wings. And go in with more of the neutral tint. And I'm working right up under that spine of his wing here. And right against his belly as well. Just dropping that in, and I'm going to let those colors kind of blend on their own. Picking up even more of the neutral tint. And just back again. I will probably have to come back in and deepen this after, and that's okay. But this gives us an initial there. I'm just going to bring a little bit of that dark into the bottom there. Just a little along the spine that was drawn in there. I'm going to pick up more of that neutral tint just to replenish my supply. Thanks, Sabrina. Well, they're ending up a little bit more brown tone than my sample, but that's okay. And like I said, I wanted to make them pop from the sky a bit. And the thing is, like when we do blacks, black is never just black, right? So you're going to have different tones to your black. And instead of it appearing really flat on your paper, if you can add some of those others, like whether it's like magentas or browns or blues to the highlights on blacks, it gives it more life, and it's not so, it won't be so flat then. So I'm just deepening with more neutral tint, dabbing it in along the edge of that belly there, because the belly is closer to us, the wings are further back. And so I'm trying to visually accomplish that by having a lighter belly against the darker wing. All right, so we're gonna do the other wing now. Grab a little bit more of the yellow ochre. A little bit more of the neutral tint in there too. There we go. Go in and same thing, I'm going to turn my painting. Okay, and let's grab more of the neutral tint. And again, just right underneath that spine, because we want that spine, it will be a lighter value. And again, along the body. Now that was quite a bit there, so I'm going to help that blend out by that damp brush, clean, just dabbing the edge of it, just to help with the blend. want to overwork it though, because I tend to do that. And just bring that dark down those spines there as well. As the paper and the paint is drying here, I'm just adding a little bit more of the neutral tint in. It's not moving quite as much at that point. And I'm going to just bring a little bit more neutral tint again into this side, which is pretty much almost dry at this point. Clean off my brush and just help to soften that blend a little bit, just dabbing along the edge there. Don't introduce a pool of water though there, because otherwise it's going to disrupt that color that was already there. I do think I needed to add just a little bit more of the yellow ochre into, there we go, that part of the wing. Okay, let's grab a little bit of that color too, and we'll do the underside. I'm just going right over the tail as well. Tail, is that what? Little tail of the bat. Grab some neutral tint, mix it in, and go right underneath his belly there. And let that dry a little bit so that we can deepen that a little bit more as well. While we're waiting for that, let's do a little bit of the, we'll do the inside of the ear. So a little bit of alizarin crimson. I'm going to put it next to my neutral tint there. And I'm going to take a little bit of the neutral tint, mix it into the alizarin crimson so it's not quite so bright. And we're just going to paint that into his ear. Same thing on the other one. And I didn't really worry about much shading. Excuse me. I am now, because his face is dry, I am just going to add just a slight wash to the sides of his face, because I'm going to pick up the tiniest bit of alizarin crimson here, and I'm just going to dab it in there to give him some little flush cheeks. It's spreading a little far up, so I'm just controlling that run of the paint there. I usually drop in a little bit more intense along the edge there of his face and let it bleed out. And it will dry lighter than what it goes on. Oh, no problem, Mary Pat. Yep, no problem. Like I was saying before, definitely you go ahead and pop onto that. It is 2, so yeah, I'll announce that to everybody in case you missed. It's Michelle, right, Kim? Michelle has a class starting right now, so you guys can pop on over to that as well. You'll be able to catch the replay of mine later because it will be posted. We're going to keep on trucking here. And let's see here. I think that I will go along and just paint these because, like I said, I didn't saturate the paper. These areas are drying pretty quick here. So I'm going to pick up a little bit more of the yellow ochre here. I'm just going to lighten this up a little bit. And you can see I just keep playing with the blends on my palette here, but I'm going to pick that up and we'll just paint. It's a little too yellow. Let's play with that a little bit more. So it's again still the yellow ochre, the neutral tint, and the burnt umber. And I'll just paint in his little leg here. And then I think we'll go with more of, without the without the neutral tint mixed in. Let's just mix some of the yellow ochre and the burnt umber together to do his little scruff. And then I'm going to pick up more of the the burnt umber and just kind of drop that in underneath his chin and let that blend out a little bit. Maybe we'll just drop a little bit in at the bottom and the edges as well. Let it kind of all blend together there. Okay, we need more of this kind of gray-brown mix here, and we're going to go along the spines of that wing. And they already appear lighter in value than the edges underneath, but we'll go back in after this is dry with just a little bit more neutral tint, just to pump up that shadow a little bit more. So he turned out quite a bit more brown than my my initial one, but that's okay. You're very welcome, Roberta. I'm going to add just a hint more shadow along the side of his face here. And this one. Pick up some more neutral tint. And honestly, if I was finding this a little too brown for my liking, I could always do like a light wash of gray over top. I'll show you. See, I'm going to kind of take a bit of that neutral tint over the area that's already painted there, and even I'll do that a little bit, just a little bit on his body. I just want to knock that brown color back a bit. So really light wash of gray. I'm painting it on the side of the body and then just very lightly bringing it across. Just do that a little bit more on his face here. And I'll just bring it up and over a bit. There. And let's go in with a fairly thick bit of the neutral tint. And I'll just get his little nose. We can always touch that up with a fine liner later too. And we're going to put a highlight on that after. We'll just dab into his eyes here a little bit. I'm just tapping them just to try to keep them nice and round there with the tip of my paintbrush. Okay, that's that guy done. So let's go back to work on this one here now. I'm losing a lot of that yellow ochre, so let's pick up more of that here. Okay, and then take some of that brown in here. And then some neutral tint as well. I'm going to just wet his belly a little bit here, and let's start to build it up in the same way that we did the other one. I'm going to just tap that blend a little bit. I'm going to drop maybe just a bit of yellow ochre back into his belly here at the middle and let those colors blend. A little bit of neutral tint around the edge there too. And we'll go ahead in and do his little face. Again, I'm just going to go right over everything because we're going to use that bleed-proof white over top of his teeth that we are able to go over top. A lot of times with watercolor, if you're not using an extra paint or medium or something like a gouache, then you can't always get that white back on top of a color, but we can with what we'll be using. So I'm just going to go in along the side of his face and drop in the darker value here. This time I'll keep this spot on his face a little brighter because it's kind of closer to the moon here. Just dab, dab, dab. And then maybe a little bit more neutral tint right along his very edge of his face. There we go. All right, now we'll go in and paint the underside of his wing. His body is hopefully dry here. I would give it a little bit longer in between going back to paint up against that edge of the body, but just in the interest of time here on our video, I'm going to go ahead and do it because I didn't overly wet that body, so it should be okay. But what would happen is those areas would bleed into each other, because remember what I said at the top of the video, your paint will travel wherever your paper is wet. So you are keeping in mind with watercolor, again, how much water's on your brush, how much water's on your paper. Just going to mix a little bit more in here. Neutral tint. I need more of that, so I'll just add a little bit more. Okay. Bring it and drop that in right under the spine of his wing, and dabbing off my paintbrush and just, actually I gotta clean it right off, it's got some paint on it there. Just dabbing that edge just to soften the blend. Again, dab dab, little touches here, barely touching the paper. We'll go in with some almost straight neutral tint here, and it's okay if there's some variations between your bats. A little bummed, guys. I'm going to be missing going to Kim's tomorrow. Unfortunately, my husband just tested positive yesterday for COVID, and thankfully he's doing okay so far. It's just mild symptoms at this point, but because of that, like, I tested negative yesterday, but I don't know if I'll remain negative. So I messaged Kim yesterday and said I'm going to have to miss out on our fun. We'll have to plan another time to get together, but important to try to keep everybody safe. And like I said, he's doing fairly well here. Playing a little bit of nurse at home too, just keeping an eye on his oxygen levels and how he's doing. But he's doing okay so far. Just mild symptoms. And then we shall see. I'm supposed to go back to work on Sunday, so I'll have to see if I remain negative, and then they'll have some screening that I have to go through, of course, before going into work. But if I test positive, then I'll be having some time off of work, so we'll see what happens. So yeah, just your little friendly reminder from your nursey friend that we're not completely out of the woods yet. It's still out there, so we still have to be cautious, be careful, be screening yourself. Oh, thanks, Sabrina. Yeah, like I said, he started to show some symptoms like Tuesday night, and then yesterday I said to him, you better do a rapid test here. And yeah, I was pretty certain it was going to come back positive. So far, he's very tired, and Dean usually has a lot of energy, so he's very tired. He's been kind of achy. Not much of a cough, just a tiny little bit, and some congestion. But mostly it's the achiness that's and the tiredness that's his biggest thing right now. So far just mild symptoms, but gotta monitor closely because things can change. We still are getting some patients in the hospital too. So yeah, like I said, not fully out of the woods yet, so still have to be careful. So yeah, I will be missing Missing our crafty hangout tomorrow, but I already said to Kim that we'll have to plan another time to hang out. Sorry, pardon me for a sec. I just have a message that was popping up in the way of our chat window here. Okay, so there's that section of that wing done. Let's get his... Did you have a lot of fun drawing these guys, Sabrina? They're adorable. And I love that in this set, the Bewitched stamp set here, that, you know, you've got so many different characters in there, so you've got a lot of options for creating so many different scenes, you know, between the witches and the wizard and then the bats, of course. So lots and lots of option there. Just gonna pick up some of that mixture. I know this is not the exact same. I had picked up just plain neutral tint before, but you can pick up some of that mix from earlier. Mix that into your brown here, and we're just gonna deepen that little bit underneath his body. So don't forget, when you're done projects from any of the classes, to upload into the folders that Carla so kindly created for us. I'm just going to swap out my paper towel. I'll use it again later after it dries. But there's no need to stick to one thing. It's all the Halloween theme, right? No, it's adorable. You did a great job on it. So let's just wet the edges of his face again, like we did on the other one, to give us little cheeks. Again, don't scrub your brush, and don't just drop a big blob of water. You just want to gently put a little wash down. Because if you put a big blob of water there, it's just going to disturb all that paint that's already down there, and you're going to get a really weird, like, cauliflower bloom, and you don't really want that on your bat's face. So I don't think you do. You're welcome, Sabrina. Do you set aside time each day to sketch for ideas for upcoming sets? I've been trying to carve out time frequently for sketching and drawing again for myself, but it doesn't always happen. Or do you keep like a pad of paper by your bed for when inspiration strikes at nighttime? Alrighty. We're gonna grab some of that alizarin crimson again, mix in a little bit of the neutral tint, and you can see I'm just grabbing from what's already on my palette there. And we'll do the inside of his ears, or her ears. Maybe it's a girl bat. There we go. And grab a little bit of the body color that we made here earlier. Gotta do his little legs and the spine of the wings. I need a little bit more water on my paintbrush there. There we go. Okay, I need a little bit more shadow under that wing, but I want to wait because we just painted that spine there. So let's give that a second to dry, and we'll move on to our final bat here. And I got to pick up some more of all of these colors again. I don't draw every day. I do have a sketchbook nearby. Oh, that's good. That's good. And we need some more yellow ochre in the mix too. There we go. Alrighty. Let's start on this guy here. I'm just going to go right into... Now my paper's a little warped. That's okay. That happens with a watercolor paper. Now you could tape that down to a surface like a clipboard or something. And I used to do that a lot, but I know that I like to flip this around, especially when I'm working with a video. It's kind of hard to flip a clipboard around. So I didn't do that, but it would help with the warping a little bit. Also, if you were drawing it, clean damp brush, sorry, and just dabbing that blended line a little bit. If you were working with, like, say, a heat tool or a hair dryer to dry it, you kind of dry one side of the paper and then flip it over and kind of dry the other, and you can kind of iron out some of those bumps, if you will. But just when we go to glue it down, we'll glue it down with quite a bit of adhesive and try to not have it too warped. I'm going to avoid that little spine of his wing here that Sabrina drew in there. And that's separating like the belly from the wing, so that's why I can work on those two areas sort of close by each other. I'm going to pick up more of the neutral tint here. Drop it right along the spine of the wing. Let it blend out. And I'm going to go in with a damp brush here, and I'm just going to lift along the edge of this wing. Remember I'd said that earlier, you can kind of reestablish a highlight by a clean damp brush and just lifting a little bit. Just because that's right beside the moon there, so it'll be a little brighter. Let's get a little bit of the burnt umber in there. We're going to go in and deepen this shadow even more on his belly. I need to go in with a damp brush, clean, barely damp brush, and just tap that edge there. I kind of want that glow to stay on his belly there a little bit. And just add that little bit of shadow along there. Just pick up a little bit more of that lighter brown there, or brownish gray. And I'm just going to drop that in along that edge of his wing. So like I said, that glow of the moon sort of reflecting there. All right, let's do his face. Same way as before. I'll try to think of something, Sabrina. Okay, we'll do his face right over everything here. And then take some of the darker mixes here, drop them along the edge and kind of along his bottom of his chin there. Maybe underneath the scruff a little bit there too. And then we'll just help that blend. Some more neutral tint right along the edge of his face that's furthest away from the moon. There we go. Let's get his little feet Now those are kind of blending into the tree a little bit, so I think we need to make them a little bit more gray. So maybe a little bit more neutral tint. That's a lot of neutral tint. So let's blend that out here. And maybe we'll just bring a little bit more neutral tint into this wing here where it's joining up to the tree. Thing is, they're similar colors, right, to what we used in there? Well, they're the same colors, really. Maybe we'll just dab out some highlights there. Remember to lift, just clean damp brush and just dab it on. I'm just dabbing a couple of his toes there. Good, good. Now let's, oh, I forgot his ears. So there's a little bit of brown in his ears, or gray, brownish gray, I guess I should say. Just there we go. Okay, and then his scruff, we did a little bit more of the lighter color here. How's everybody doing? I say everybody, but I think it's just Sabrina right now. But that's okay. Everybody who will be watching in the future. I think some people are working today too. So there are probably going to be a lot of people catching replays, and that's okay. That's why we do it in this format. So hopefully some of you have found your way over to Michelle's class, which is going on now. All right, let's do the inside of his ear. So that was the alizarin crimson again. Alizarin crimson with a bit of neutral tint. Good, and then we're just gonna lightly dampen those cheeks. Like I said, lightly. Don't drop a big blob of water on, or you're going to get an ugly bloom on his face. Sometimes the blooms are nice in backgrounds and such, but typically you don't want a bloom in the middle of a creature's face. So let's just dab, 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 just to help to spread that out a little bit. As you can see from that first little bat there, and their second one too, that lizard, it does dry quite a bit lighter than when you first put it down. So don't be afraid if it looks a little heavy at first. Oh, thanks, Sabrina. Hopefully it's living up to your expectations. Okay, a little bit more yellow ochre here. We got to go back and do the scruff on this third bat. I don't want it to be too bright though, because all of the colors are kind of muted with it being a night scene. So let's maybe just add just a touch of neutral tint in there, just to grunge it up a little bit, and under his chin here too. Oh, and I got to do the edges of his wing. So I'm just gonna wet the paint that I've already got on my palette here. And just use the very tip of that brush to get those little bitty areas. There we go. Okay, I think I want to do just a little bit more shading here. So let's just use this. This was from like the sky, but let's just use a little bit of that and bring it in over here. And I just want to bring in just a little bit more shadow underneath that belly there. And just, so I'm just doing wet paint onto a dry surface at this point. And we're just going to deepen it up underneath his bum a little bit. Is it okay if I say bum? and under this wing as well. Again, that's dry paper and a little bit of wet paint, and I'm just using a damp, barely damp brush, barely damp, just to blend it out a little bit. Okay, a little bit more under that wing. A little bit more. Same on this guy here. I like my shadows to be nice and deep, so that's why I'm just going to go back in and play a little bit. You could, if you wanted to, try to use a little bit of pencil crayons, colored pencil. Somebody on our team years and years ago used to use, shoot, what were they? They were, I think, charcoal pencils. They used to often go in with their pieces and add some shadows. Oh gosh, was it Jenny? I can't remember. And Kim probably is on Michelle's, so I can't ask her. But yeah, there's lots of options there. So I mean, you kind of do like a mixed media, if you will, by introducing some other mediums in if you felt the need. So just adding a little bit more of that really deep shadow there. Just under that cheek a little bit. I think we need a little bit under this side of his face. I don't want to go too dark though, because otherwise he's just going to blend right into the sky. Like that, I could afford to go a little darker because the moon's behind him. But if I go too deep here, his face will just kind of disappear into that night sky there. So I think that's good for the bats. I think. Let me just actually, I'm just going to go over just this belly here with a lighter color again, just to give it a bit more of a glow there. And his little feet. There we go. Okay. Now, I am going to go in with a fine liner. And I know I did his eyes here and his nose there, but I'm just going to, with the paint, but I'm just going to go in with the fine liner just to kind of redraw in a few of the details on the face. And I'm going to do the eyes and the nose on this little guy in the fine liner. Make sure your paper's dry. And then do his mouth here. And the same with this. I'm just going to flip it. We'll add the highlight in with the bleed proof white in just a moment there. Okay, so we can go to work on the moon, whoops, the moon a little bit more. So now I'm going to take my white gouache. We will also need the bleed proof white, but we'll use that after. So I'm going to go in with the gouache, and I'm going to first turn that around, and I'm just trying to bring this in here. I'm going to add a little bit of, I don't think my gouache closed very well, but we're going to add a little bit of gouache to my palette. This is the Winsor & Newton Professional Gouache. Designer's Gouache, that's what it's called. Okay, so I'm going to, first of all, I know I'm going to want yellow ochre in a little while here. So we're going to add some yellow ochre to the palette. Let me just move this up a little bit so you guys can see what I'm doing. And we're going to wet the gouache. Now gouache works like watercolor. It's opaque though. So what I'm going to do here is load up my brush. This is my round 6 again. And we're going to paint around the edge of the moon here. and the gouache will dry lighter. And I'm gonna kind of go in between all the areas. And the thing with gouache too is that it reactivates. So when you paint it on, when you go back to paint again, it will reactivate on your paper. So I'm going around the perimeter of the moon. Circumference of the moon? No. Yeah, circumference. Anyways, going around the edges of the moon. I kind of overshot a little bit there. Let me clean that edge up a little bit. Okay. So we're gonna go paint over those dark areas. I'm gonna wet my brush here, and I'm just sort of dabbing it on here, and it will dull down that texture that we put down earlier. So I'm just kind of dabbing it around with a damp brush, and that's okay because we're going to add more back in. Like I was telling you earlier, it's a little bit of a process for the moon. So I'm sorry, I'm going to be flipping this paper around a lot as I go. I'm sorry if I make anybody seasick. We'll clean up some of those edges if we need to after. I'll go into the edge there. Whoopsie. I'll go into the edge, or that small space with my round 4. Going right up to the edge of my bat carefully, because like I said, this is opaque. And I'm just going in with a damp brush here again, clean damp brush, just to kind of dab out a little bit around some of those earlier shadows that we put in with the watercolor. Whoops, I keep hitting that same corner of that poor bat's ears. Okay, and I'm going to turn this just so that I can work around this edge of the moon here, which I did get a little bleed of the paint earlier, and that's okay because as you can see, we'll just get rid of it with the gouache. Okay, and then damp brush, just to sort of, I'm picking it up at the edge and kind of dabbing it over the areas that I painted earlier. So it's just kind of muting it a bit. And I need to go in with my little brush here. This is my round 4. We'll get right up to the edge of the bat here. Right down in there, and just dab it out and blend it here. Just come over this edge again. We'll really fix that up once we add the bleed proof white in there. Now I need to go around the edges here. Of the tree branch and the leaves. Okay, just going to keep going with my round 4 here for a minute, and we'll just kind of dab a little bit more over top of some of those earlier shadows here. And so I'm taking the gouache, putting a little bit on, and then immediately taking kind of a clean damp brush and just dabbing. Dab, 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 dab. Just to blend it over. Now, I'm going to go in, I'm going to pick up some of that sky / moon color that we used earlier. Take a little bit into some of the gouache here, and I'm just going to add some more color back in. Clean off my brush and dab A lot of dabbing in this. And just kind of blending it. And just dab and blend. And pick up a little bit more so I can have a few darker areas, which will soften a little bit. Don't be too uniform in your application here. You don't want any real structure to this. Clean damp brush and just soften them a little bit. Ever so, actually I'm going to switch to my round 4 and don't soak the paper, but just blend it out a little bit. Okay, then let's go back in with some gouache again. Kind of go around the edges of the moon again. And I'm going to kind of go down between all these areas that I painted before. We're going to blend it out anyways. I know it looks a little kooky now. Sorry, turning my paper again here. If you are uncomfortable holding your paintbrush, then turn your paper if you can. Okay, and now clean damp brush, barely damp, and we're going to take that gouache that we just laid down there, and we're just going to kind of dab it and blend it. You might need to pick up a little bit more gouache. Dab and blend. So you're adding those textured bits in there with the deeper colors, and then you're just kind of muting them down a little bit again with the gouache. You still want them to show through. Down into that area by that little bat, and right down into there. Okay, so we need to get a little bit of you just gotta go for it, Sabrina. What was I going to do here? I want to put in a little bit of the yellow ochre now. So I'm going to take a bit of that gouache, mix in a little bit of yellow ochre, and we're just going to randomly dab some yellow in here now. Actually, you know what? I'm going to wait a little bit till that dries. Hold on a sec. We'll wait because I want to get it to be a little bit more yellowy, and it's not going to do that if I mix it in with the gouache being wet because it's going to be milky looking. So in the meantime, let's get this bleed proof white out. I'm going to go in with my liner brush, or my rigger it's called, when I work with my bleed proof white. I usually just pick some up and I put it in the lid of my cap here. don't want this to be too watery, and this is when I really have to get my reading glasses on here because I just want the tiniest little spot of white on these eyes. And on his nose. And those little teeth. And these are tiny, tiny little details. Do the same on this little guy here. That little highlight really brings them to life there. Little teeth. Let me just wet my brush ever so a little bit there. And then we'll do that guy. A little highlight on his nose as well, and his little teeth. You could do that with the gouache too, but I just find the bleed proof white works a little bit better. And I'll probably go in with the liner and fix up that one eye a little bit there. Teeny, teeny, tiny teeth. Very teeny, tiny. I'm just putting the lid on that bleed proof white and setting it aside again there for a minute. So, okay. I'm actually not going to go with gouache. I'm just going to pick up some watered down yellow ochre. And I'm going to add it in some random spots. Not all over. Just pick some areas. Okay, and then you're going to, you guessed it, blend it out a little bit. I mean, it doesn't have to be a perfectly smooth blend because you do want it to kind of look like the texture of the moon. I'm just going to add a little bit more in. Okay, and just dabbing it. A couple of areas that are ever so slightly stronger. And then let's just put back in a couple of dark areas as well. Almost done here. Then we can assemble our card. Actually, no, I gotta do the stars too here. Okay, we're gonna let that dry because then we're gonna go in with the bleed proof white. In the meantime though, this is where I kind of have to be a little bit careful. I am going to grab, sorry, I'm going to just tear some paper here because I didn't create masks. I'm just going to kind of block off some of these guys a little bit just because I want to splatter some stars. And yes, I'm living sort of dangerously. So if you really wanted to be more careful than me, you would cut masks for these little guys, but I'm just gonna hope for the best here because because I didn't cut a mask on the other ones. I just sort of blocked off. Okay. Let's try to round this off a little bit. It's not going to be perfect, but that's okay. I'm preparing to splatter some stars is what I'm going to do here. So I'm going to take some of that gouache on my paintbrush here, and I'm just going to hold it over. I'm going to, actually I should probably cover up that tree trunk a little bit too. There are better ways to do this, but we're just going to kind of do it like this. I'm just going to sort of block off, and I'm going to, well, that's not enough water on there. So you got to water down that gouache, and then you're going to hold your brush over, and you're going to splat. And so I'm just moving my paintbrush around. And kind of using my finger to block off the areas that I didn't mask very well. Living a little dangerously. Can you see what I'm doing there? Yeah, sorry, I was just checking my, I'm just tapping. Let's see. Not bad. Whoops, I just, it wasn't bad till I smeared that. That's okay. Look, we're going to fix it. We're going to fix it. Plus, they could be shooting stars, so it doesn't really matter. Just pick up a little bit of water, just a little bit. We'll just soften it up. Plus, we'll add a couple of hand-done stars, too. Good. Now, I just wanted to get a couple up in the corner here as well. I don't have enough water on my brush there. You can practice this on a scrap piece of paper too. Yeah, falling stars, see? I'm afraid for you. What do you mean am I playing? Yes, I'm playing paper dolls. Okay. Okay, what's happening now is I don't have enough water mixed in with this gouache here. There we go. Okay, carefully this time we'll pick this up. There we go. Now, what I'm going to do, wash that brush off. I should probably clean up this mess here. Just a second. Afraid for me. I'm going to go in with my little paintbrush here, and I'm just going to add, actually that's a little wet there. I need some more gouache on my palette here because I used it all up. So a little bit more gouache. I don't need much. There we go. And I'm just going to go in and just add a couple of bigger stars, like some different size ones. And I'll go over those areas that I smudged. There's a fix for everything. And we'll just add a couple in here too. So just in the areas that look like they didn't get hit, or the areas where I had to be a little bit more controlled, I'll add a few more. Like in here, I didn't really splatter any. And what I'm also going to do is, just to give a couple of yellow stars in there, I'm going to mix a little bit of that yellow ochre into the gouache. And we'll do a couple of yellowy stars here and there, just to add a little bit of interest. So I'm just dabbing those in. I had a little blotch there, that's okay. Now the reason, and I'm going to use in a sec here, I use the bleed proof white is because I just felt like my moon was lacking as much glow as I wanted to. Thank you, Sabrina. Let's grab that bleed proof white again. So I've got my, choose my round 4. So let's pick up a bit more of this bleed proof white in the cap here. And we're going to go around the moon in this because that's going to make it even brighter here. So I'm going to go around, and this time I can kind of clean up that edge a little bit more even. So right around the edge. I'm going to wet that brush right away, and I'm going to soften that into the rest of the moon. Just kind of softening that and pulling it into the moon a little bit. Bringing it into some of the areas in the moon that I want to be a little bit whiter. Just because I want to get varying tones. I'm going to drop just a couple of brighter blobs into the moon here as well in a few spots, and blend them out. I didn't pre-wet the moon, but as I'm doing this, it's kind of wetting it in spots. So let's go around the bottom edge of the moon here. And just dabbing that a little bit, and then since it's a little bit more wet now, I'm just, like I said, dabbing in a couple of really bright white areas. I mean, they will dry down a little softer than that. And I'm just dabbing. And there's no like right or wrong pattern with the moon here. You're just trying to create the look of some of those craters and textures on the moon surface. So just have fun with this part. If you didn't like where it ended up, you can always go back in with a little bit more of your like purples and your yellows to add in a little bit more of the colors again. I think that's going to be good. I just want to blend this in a little bit more because I feel like that's a bit of a harsh edge on that shadow there. So that bleed proof white just brightens that edge of the moon that little bit extra and gives that pop, that glow. Thank you, Kim. And then if you wanted to, just because this sometimes ends up a little brighter than the gouache, you could dab in a couple of odd stars if you had like any, like up in here. Just feel like it could use a couple more. I think we'll call that quits for the painting. Let me put the cap back on here and move my stuff out of the way. Now there were a few spots I just want to go in with my multi-liner again, where I feel like I just need to fix up. Let me turn this guy right side up. Or yeah, I just went a little haywire on my eyes with him. I'm just gonna outline those teeth because I kind of lost the outline when I was working on the moon here with this bat. His ear got a little covered there, and his outline on his teeth disappeared here too. There we go. All right. I am going to just set this aside for a second while we assemble our card. And then we'll take the tape off of that and everything. So, oh, I forgot to grab one thing out. Pardon me for a minute while I reach for some double-sided tape. Okay. My favorite glue is this, the Tombow with the glue, green and white bottle. So for the inside of our card, super simple. I'm going to take that, again, this was the optional bit here. And I'm just going to go, this is always the boring part. Oh yeah, and I should zoom out here too so you guys can see what's going on. Hold on. Hold on, I got to make sure I go the right way here. That's the wrong way. Sorry, I just gave you a close-up of my paper. Okay. Gonna just glue this right onto the card base. And then that little snippet here of paper, that was the 1/2 inch by 4 5/8. That's going to go just along the bottom of our paper here. You flip this over, and the design papers are so cute on both sides. It's hard to decide which side you want to use. And so I just put that right kind of along the bottom. And then we'll just add a little snippet of the washi tape. I think I just added it partway across that. Yeah, I did. So I'm going to cut a piece. You can decide what size you want. Just a sec, I got to grab my scissors. And so I'm just going to snip a little piece here. And we'll just line that up. It's easy peasy. Use a little bit of that for the inside. And then I'm going to set that card base aside for a minute. And we're going to assemble this bit here. So this was your 4 7/8 by 4 7/8 black piece. And we're going to take the 3 by 4 3/4 polka dotted piece. And remember, like I said, I had inked all of these up in black ink. I just used our Wicked Black ahead of class. And we're going to put that at the top part, leaving an edge, of course, because that black is our matte. Then I'm going to take the green 2 by 4 3/4 and the little strip of 1/2 by 4 3/4 black. And I'm going to just glue along the back top edge of that green sheet, right along the edge there. And then I'm going to glue it to this black strip with that little bit of a border sticking up there, just to edge it. Okay. Sorry, is this all staying in frame? Yes, it is. Okay. There's that. Now we're going to glue this onto the bottom part of our front. Is this part supremely boring for you guys? Like, this isn't a complex card. You probably could have figured out how to assemble this without me going step by step. I apologize. So line these paper edges up here so that you've got that black frame showing all the way around. So there's that. Now you're going to take, can't get a hold of it, the purple 3 1/2 by 1 3/4 and the black 3 5/8 by 1 7/8. These measurements were all in that picture. So these you should have had all snipped out before class began. We're going to glue this purple piece onto the black mat. With this Tombow glue, I love it, but it does, like, it stays tacky if it's exposed. So I always put my glue in quite a bit from my edge so that it doesn't ooze out, because otherwise you get a sticky spot that everything will stick to. So, all right, so you're going to put that there. I'm just going to use, I know I haven't glued the watercolor painting on yet, but this is the mat for it, and it's going to go about there. I just want to kind of eyeball where this is going to go. Okay. Because as you can see here in the finished one, it kind of sticks out a little bit there. So I'm going to just have like a little portion of those polka dots showing. So let's glue that down here. So I'm going to just turn this for a sec. I'm lining this black edge up with the edge of the black design paper, making sure it's nice and even up there. Now the next part we're going to do is take your snippet of twine. I'm just going to cap that glue for a sec. And we're going to wrap this 3 times, but I don't like wasting twine. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to cheat a little bit. So we're going to take some double-sided tape. I'm just going to get a piece here, snip it in half, throw it on my card. And I am going to put a little bit so that it's kind of lining up, because I'm going to have the twine going here. So I want that to be able to catch where I'm going to put the twine. You'll see what I mean in a minute here. So if I flip this over like that, so it's kind of in line with sort of the edge of that purple piece. Okay, if that makes sense. I'm going to take that off, and I'm going to start and just stick down the edge of the twine here, and then I'm going to flip the card over, and I'm going to come up and stick it to that side of the tape there. Sorry, I know this is a lot of flipping back and forth. Just do a little fold there, because this way I don't have to wrap all the way. You could if you want to, but this way you're not wrapping all the way around the card. Come back down again, stick it to that double-sided tape there. Then we're going to come back one more time, because I like to do it 3 times, and I didn't measure that properly. Hold on a sec. I cut this piece a little tighter than I think I told you guys to. If it doesn't work, that's okay. Twice is enough. So I might only do this piece twice. I think I just barely managed. Yep. Okay. So there's 3 times. Let's just pull this up a little bit more. So that way, like I said, it just saves you a little bit on the twine. So now we can take this and we can glue this down to our card base. So I'm going to grab that Tombow glue back again. And I like to make sure I really get a good amount of glue over top of those twine edges just to secure them. I know they're on the double-sided tape, but I still like to make sure they get caught in with the glue. There we go. Make sure that you glue this on the right way because this is the top of my card, so we want to make sure that the top of the card goes, because you know we never glue things on the wrong way in card making, right? I've done it so many times before, it's so annoying. Okay, so we're gonna glue that down. And now that this is dry, we're going to just peel off this washi tape here. So I had folded mine over, so I've just got to loosen it from the back first. If I was going to be putting this right down on top of, like you know how earlier I said you could tape it to a clipboard, I obviously wouldn't fold it over. I would just tape it straight down, but so I'm just loosening up all these back edges here, which again is such an exciting part of this video. I apologize for the boring parts. Okay, now let's get one edge free. Okay, when you're pulling your washi tape away, it shouldn't tear your paper, but depending on the type of paper you use, you should, let me just see here. You want to pull kind of away like that. There's one side. And I'm going slow to make sure that it doesn't tear. If you were pulling in towards it and let's say a piece of the paper caught, you could tear it like into your image, and that's going to really suck after all that time that you spend on it. Good. And there's your white border. I can see I got the tiniest little bit of bleed there, but that's okay. Now you're going to take that 3 1/8 by 3 7/8 black piece, and we're going to glue this down. Now this is where I was saying, because it's a little warped, and right now I'm holding it upside down, we're going to put a lot of glue on this, but still I'm going to avoid the edges though, because like as I apply pressure, it's going to squeeze out, and I don't want it to, because like I said, when this Tombow glue, like it stays tacky if it's exposed. But I like it because it grips so well. But I do tend to apply quite a bit there to watercolor paper. And then I'm going to, I like it because you've got just a little bit of time to move it, but then it grips quickly. So it gives you that little bit of play time just to make sure that you've got everything lined up. And I'm going to start from the top here now that I've got these edges lined up. And you're going to want to make sure your hands are pretty clean here, but I'm going to kind of come down through the middle and then work my way out, just because this paper is, like I said, it's a little warped just from all the water, which is normal with your watercolor paper. If you were working on a block, it might not be too bad. But so I'm just kind of applying even pressure. I'm trying to make sure that there aren't any areas that are lifting. Make sure everything's dry here too. Thank you, Marianne. That's really sweet. Thank you. And I'm sure you all love seeing my fist. Must be so exciting there. Okay, so that's glued down. So now we have to add this onto our card base. So again, more gluing. or double side tape, whatever your preferred method of adhering things is. I like my glue. And we're going to glue this about here. And I'm just holding it for a minute just to make sure that it doesn't lift. Just because of the buckling of that paper, I don't want it to lift off. Okay, let's get our glittery bats that hopefully you guys stickled up before class. There they are there. And you can put them wherever you like. I'm just going to put that Tombow glue kind of in the middle because again I don't want it to squish out. I'm going to put this big one right here. I'm just going to hold it for a sec while that glue takes hold. That should be good there. And then the smallest one I put beside the big guy. And I put him right down here. Oh shoot, he slid. And this one here, we shall put up in this corner. Put my cap on my glue while I'm holding him down. And then we just have to add our our dots, pardon me. And that's it. Let me pull them out here. So you can add whatever dots you like. I'm going to add a big black one up here. And a purple one. And a green one. I'm just going to use my scissors here just to, whoops, help place this a little bit. Got a little bit under that bat, but that's okay. So there's those ones. And then I used some smaller ones down at the bottom. I'm just grabbing them off my tray here, sorry. Black. I use the same 3 colors in each corner just to sort of balance each other off. And voila! There's your watercolored card featuring the bats from the Bewitched set in your kit. Don't know if anybody stuck through. I hope that that you guys enjoyed this one. Are there any questions at all before I sign off here? I'll stick around for a second. Just putting my paints away, sorry. Otherwise, I'm gonna make a mess here. Go. Let's stick that out of the way. Thank you, Sabrina. Thank you, Marianne. So that is, like I said, our watercolored card from your Halloween kit. We used the Bewitched stamp set, and it was the little bats from that guy, and then all the design papers and everything are included in your card. And we finished the inside as well. So if there aren't any questions, I'll sign off. You can, if you do have questions when you're watching this on the replay, go ahead and tag me in a comment, and then I will do my best to answer your questions. As I mentioned earlier, Carla created folders for each of our classes. So when you are done, be sure to put them in the folder. I'd love to see what you guys created. I hope you enjoy the rest of the retreat. We've got lots of fun, so make sure to stay tuned for everything going on and enjoy the rest of your classes. Bye.